A very rare seismic event, which occurs almost once or twice a decade, has struck Venezuela, particularly closer to the coastline, which has already claimed massive casualties and has caused damage worth billions of dollars. What is referred to as an earthquake doublet has actually struck the region of Venezuela. Hello and welcome to Unacademy. In this session, we shall be talking about what is this phenomena of earthquake doublet, why it has struck the region of Venezuela, and which are the other factors involved into this in a simple and an organized manner. Now, first of all, when we talk about the event in itself, what was the event? So you basically had twin earthquakes or a couple of earthquakes spread apart by just 39 seconds. So you can imagine that the shaking on the ground surface would have been almost continuous. The first earthquake which struck, now that was having a magnitude of 7.2. And very close to it, you'll find that the second earthquake also struck with a magnitude of 7.5, spaced around by 39 seconds. Now, this has caused damage to the existing buildings, loss of lives, and still the rescue activities are being carried on. But here, why do earthquakes occur in the first place? In a very simple term. So, when we talk about the entirety of the Earth structure, the upper surface is what is referred to as the lithosphere. Now, that lithosphere includes the portion of the crust plus solid upper mantle, solid portion of upper mantle. Now, this has got a thickness of almost 100 to 200 kilometers, depending upon the regions. Sometimes even it can be 70 kilometers. So you can think about it around 70 to around 160 kilometers. That is the thickness of it. This is your lithosphere. Now, that lithosphere is broken into subparts, which are known as individual plates. Now, as these plates they move with respect to each other, the movement is obviously not going to be uniform. What do I mean by that? For example, think about it, the two four ends of your palms, right? When you close a fist. Now, do close this fist and try to rub your fingers against each other. You'll find that there is resistance offered by one finger to the other, and that leads to a sudden jump motion. Just like that, in the interior of planet Earth, you do have the case of the plates which try to move with respect to each other, but they face resistance. Now, as long as they do face resistance, the pressure keeps on building up inside. Just like your finger, eventually that pressure is overcome, the resistance is overcome, and there is that sudden movement. Whenever that sudden movement does occur, it releases massive amount of energy which leads to the shaking of the earth's surface, and that is what we refer to as an earthquake. Now, this particular earthquake, the portion from where it originates is the focus of the earthquake, and the surface immediately perpendicular or immediately above the focus, that is the epicenter of the earthquake. Now, if you take a look at this particular map once again, you will find that the foci or in the epicenter were quite close to each other. Means in the interior of Earth, the movement happened very close to each other. And that is why you had this earthquake doublet. But it doesn't occur very frequently. Now, even the magnitude 7.1, 7.5, what are we supposed to make out of it? So, magnitude is the measure of the amount of energy which is released during an earthquake. It is something which is expressed with the help of the Richter scale. Now, the Richter scale is logarithmic in nature, which means what? The earthquake of magnitude 7 will have almost 10 times more amount of energy which is released as compared to an earthquake of magnitude 6. Now, earthquake of magnitude 7 and more generally considered to be a major seismic event can destroy buildings and can also cause severe damage. The shaking on the Earth's surface is also massive. And when you talk about magnitude, so you see these graph readings, these are actually presented by the seismograph. The measurement stations that you have on the ground, they basically continue to measure the vibrations experienced on the ground surface. So, this amplitude of the energy released, that gives you an idea about the magnitude of the earthquake or the magnitude of the seismicity. Now, here, when we talk about this seismicity, why has it occurred in the region of Venezuela itself? Why the plate movement has happened across Venezuela itself? So you observe across the planet Earth, there are multiple different fault lines. Fault lines means those larger cracks which exist in the interior where the rocks can move with respect to each other. And here you see all around the region of the Pacific Ocean, what is also referred to as the Pacific Ring of Fire. Now, that is the region which is dominated by these fault lines. Observe the region around Venezuela. Now, this is also where you have a small plate which is known as the Caribbean plate. The Caribbean plate and the South American plate, they were moving with respect to each other, and they have been moving with respect to each other. The average speed of their movement is roughly around 20 to 22 millimeter per year. So every year, they tend to move at this particular speed, where this minor Caribbean plate tends to move in the eastward direction, whereas the South American plate is trying to move in the westward direction. So it is a kind of a parallel movement. And this is where the zone of faults, they do exist. But these zones of faults, they exist all over the region around the Pacific, even in the Himalayan region. That is why Himalayas also, they experience frequent seismicity. Now, here, if you observe, this was the area of the seismicity. But it is not an isolated event. As you can see in this particular map, this indicates seismicities in the past. There have been multiple massive seismicities: 1953, 1906, 2007, 1914, right? 1969, 2018. This entire region has been dotted with lot of seismic events, and that is because of the presence of the fault line. Now, before we proceed ahead further, a very short little announcement for everyone interested in clearing the civil services examination. Now, we have come up with a very lucrative offer of 16,999 for the entirety of GS as well as CSAT in a timely manner. Ensure that the syllabus is covered and ensure that you are not in this preparation for years altogether. Use the code IES English. The new batch, Elevate batch, starts from 1st of July. Do ensure that you are a part of that batch and use this code to avail the maximum possible discount. Now, having said that, the reason that we were talking about, observe that the South American plate is moving westward and the Caribbean plate, which is a minor plate, has been moving eastward. Now, these are kilometer thick rocks. So it is not as if they will move and slide with respect to each other like pieces of paper. No, they will have resistance. And that is why it is in this region of Venezuela that you will find four active faults. Four active faults. That is, there are four such places within the region of Venezuela where there are movement of the rocks in the deeper underground. So you have these faults: El Pilar, San Sebastian, Oca Ancon, and even the Bocono fault. Now, ideally, what tends to happen? Whenever an earthquake does occur, now that means the stress which has developed in the interior, that has been released. That is why the earthquake occurs. After that, the rocks are relaxed. But in this case, you had an earthquake doublet. Under normal circumstances, when an earthquake occurs, it is followed by slight readjustment of the rocks, and that is what we experience in the form of aftershocks. But in this case, there was no aftershock, but another major seismicity. Why was that the case? That is basically because when you had one earthquake, now at that point of time, this earthquake happened where? across one of these four fault zones that we have talked about. Now, ideally, the stress should be released. But here, imagine this. Imagine you have your fingers like this, right? And both the fingers are opposed by the fingers of the other hand. You are trying to push this hand lower. Just hold on, listen to this carefully, and the entire complex geographical phenomena will be understood within 30 seconds. Now imagine that first this finger moves, the forefinger. Now, as the forefinger suddenly moves, there is seismicity, there is earthquake. But now what has happened? There is more pressure on the second index finger here. So that is where more pressure is induced, and then immediately the second finger can't hold on to that pressure. So the first earthquake increased the pressure, increased the pressure on the second fault. Okay, on second fault. And that is what led to the slip across the second fault. Okay. And that slip across the second fault has led to the second earthquake. So, this entire process was basically having a time span distance of just 39 seconds. Now, the USGS tells us that it is such a rare event that only around 2 to 5% of the seismic activities across the world they indicate the earthquake doublet. Please do not commit the mistake of thinking that it is an aftershock. It is an earthquake doublet. Now, the two earthquakes, what is the doublet? Two earthquakes of nearly identical magnitude, they do occur close to each other, and they rupture either across the same fault or two closely connected faults, as has been the case across the region of Venezuelan margin. And the interval between them is usually seconds to a few minutes. The last time this occurred was in Turkey in 2012, right? And at that point of time, the minor plate near the region of Turkey did experience two earthquakes, doublet of earthquakes of magnitude in the order of 6. Now, what is the name of the minor plate in the region of Turkey? Let us know in the comment section below. But here we have to know the various different fault lines in the region. And now I hope you will be able to relate to it, that why the seismicity has been occurring in this region across the Bacono and the San Sebastian faults. So this is the reason for the earthquake doublet. After all, Venezuela is a region of multiple different fault lines. Okay, so what is it that we have discussed in this session today? A quick recap. What has happened in Venezuela is an earthquake doublet and not a normal seismicity. It becomes very important for you for the portion of the examination. Secondly, why does the earthquake doublet occur? What is an earthquake and what is the magnitude of an earthquake? Then, after that, which are the plates involved in that region? You have the minor Caribbean plate and the American plate. They are moving parallel to each other, neither towards nor away from each other. This kind of a movement is also what is referred to as the transform movement of the plates, where they neither move away from each other nor towards each other, and that has led to the slippage across these fault lines. And one fault line slippage has increased the pressure across the other fault line, and that is why this has become so very prominent. So that is what the earthquake doublet refers to, and that is the summarization of a major geographical concept important both for the optional as well as for your GS. If you have liked the session, put that in the comment section below and bless us with your like, share, and the subscribe button. Till we meet again, do take care of yourself. Goodbye. Thank you.